Hello, welcome to the Kitchen Spy. My name is Kate and here's another recipe video, and this time it's for brownies. Now, as we're near to Halloween, I've done a kind of Halloween theme, but I've split that into two. So the brownie recipe is at the front and I'll bookmark all of this down below. So if you just want the brownie recipe, you can do that. And then if you want to look at the decoration for the Halloween stuff, then you can go straight to that as well. Anyway, I hope that this video finds you safe and well, and this is the first of the videos that I'm posting on Mondays as a regular thing. I'm moving to Monday, Wednesday and Friday uploads because that's more convenient for me, because it gives me the whole weekend, which is basically the only time I have to do the editing and things. So hopefully that works for you guys as well. Anyway, let's have a look at the recipes and I hope you enjoy the video. So in terms of ingredients for this, and this recipe was given to me by a friend from the BBC website. So we've got 185 grams of dark chocolate, and this is Bournville dark chocolate. We have got 40 grams of cocoa powder, and again, this is Bournville cocoa powder. And then we have here 100 grams of chocolate, milk chocolate chunked into small pieces, but you could use like nibs of chocolate if you wanted to. We've got 3 large eggs, and we've got butter, and this is 185 grams of butter just chopped into small pieces. And then because I'm making gluten free, I've got just a teaspoon of xanthan gum. Then I've got the flour, and this is 85 grams of gluten-free flour. And finally, 275 grams of silver spoon, I've used, caster sugar. You can use golden caster sugar if you want to, but I just hadn't got any, so I just used the ordinary stuff. Then you're going to need a brownie tin, and I've just used actually a tray bake tin here. So the recipe calls for a 20 by 20 centimetre, but I hadn't got that. So this is 20 by 27 and it worked out fine. And so the first thing we need to do is melt the butter and the chocolate, the dark chocolate, together. And I'm just doing that over a very small pan of just gently simmering water. As you can see here, it's all a bit shaky, sorry about that. And you just need to just melt that very gently. So don't boil it or anything until everything is all melted and mixed together. And then you've got this rather gorgeous looking glossy liquid. And then once we've done that, we just need to leave that to cool to room temperature, because we're going to mix that in with the other ingredients and we don't want it too hot. So this really is the first step that you have to do. I'm going to move this to one side to let it cool down while I do the rest of the cake. So I'm using a balloon whisk here because I'm just using this to beat together the eggs and the sugar, so I don't need the K-beater. So I've got 3 eggs in there, and then I'm just going to pop my sugar in, and then I'm just going to blitz that all together until it's really light and fluffy. And when you pick up the whisk, as you move it around, you can see that it's leaving trails in the mixture, and I'm just going to put that on high and leave that to do its thing. Remember to actually switch it on. I thought I'd leave that in, it's quite funny. Anyway, so we just leave that to whisk, and it takes as long as it takes, really, depending on the power of your machine. So here we are at the end, and as you can see, that's kind of doubled in size. It's very pale now, and when I'm moving the whisk around, you can see that it's leaving some trails in the mixture, and that is the consistency that we want. So I've removed the bowl from the mixer now, and I'm just going to add the cooled butter chocolate mixture to the eggs and sugar, and then I'm just going to mix that in gently, so that I'm keeping the air that we've actually incorporated into the eggs and sugar. I'm sure all of you have got, if you bake, you've got a recipe for brownies that you use, and obviously you can use that. So here I'm just using a rubber spatula just to do a kind of cutting and turning motion to make sure that the chocolate is all mixed into the egg mixture. And yeah, did you see, I don't know whether any of you watched Great British Bake Off, but when the contestants did brownies, that I don't think there was even one that was any good. It was a complete disaster. Anyway, it makes us all feel more human, I think. So as you can see there, the chocolate's mixed through into the mixture, and it's a very even kind of middling brown colour. And now I just need to add the flour, and because obviously, as I said, I'm using gluten-free flour, and I find that if I use a teaspoon of xanthan gum, that adds to the process. So I'm using that, just adding that teaspoon in there, and then also the cocoa powder. And it's important to sieve the mixture here, because especially the cocoa powder can be quite clumpy. And so towards the end of adding this, then I'm just going to use a spoon to make sure that I get all of the lumps out of the cocoa and the flour. So once I've done that and got rid of everything, and as you can see that sieve is empty, then I'm just going to fold that through using again a spatula. So just making sure that we're incorporating all of the ingredients together, so the dry ingredients in with the wet ingredients, and take your time over this, because just make sure that you've got absolutely everything all mixed in. And then once you've done that, you can just go in with the chocolate chunks. Now this recipe calls for half white chocolate and half milk chocolate, but I'm just using milk chocolate here. And as I said earlier, if you've got like little nibs of chocolate or chocolate chunks or whatever already done, then you can use those, but 100 grams. And at this point, if you wanted to add anything else, like some dried fruit or anything, then you can put it in at this point too. And then all we need to do is just pop it all into the tin. Now, as I said before, I hadn't got the right size tin. So the right size tin should have been 20 by 20, and this was 20 by 27. So the ones that I got were actually quite shallow, but because this is such a rich recipe, that doesn't matter, I don't think. So just you need to just keep an eye on the cooking times, and you'll know what's right for your oven. And in terms of the oven, then we need to preheat the oven to gas mark 4, and I will put the conversions down below in the more information, where I'll also leave the recipe ingredients. So just make sure that your oven is preheated, and I should have said that earlier, I appreciate that, so I'll put a note on the screen to do that. And then just make sure it's all nice and even, and then just pop that in the oven on the middle shelf. And I'm just making sure here that I've got all of the mixture off the spoons that I'm using, because I don't want to waste any of it. So I'm just popping this in the oven now for about 25 minutes, and after 25 minutes just take it out and just wobble it a little bit, and if it's still moving in the middle, then give it another 5 minutes. Otherwise, if it's not, then it's ready. And here is the finished brownies, and as you can see, that looks really good, as a brownie should, nice and crisp on top, and it's going to be really soft and gooey. And then before you do anything with brownies, you need to make sure that they are completely cool and cold. And now we'll have a look at making the decorations. So what I've got here is some fondant and or icing. You can use ready to roll icing. I think actually the orange stuff was ready to roll icing rather than fondant. So I've just got that in a bowl. It's orange, and I'll show you later on how I made it orange. It was white, and then I've got some brown as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is just making sure that the surface that I'm using, and this is just a pastry mat really, is coated, because it has a tendency to stick. And you can see that when I've coated it with either corn flour or with icing sugar, then it stops sticking. And also this has a tendency to stick to your hands, so this little bag thing, which I'll show you in a bit later, is actually quite useful, just to make sure that you don't stick to whatever you use. So just a disclaimer here is that I am not a professional cake maker. I am not a professional cake decorator, so if I'm offending anyone with my methodologies and things, then I apologize for that. But these things really are very simple. So what I'm doing here is just taking the amount of dough that I've got. I mean icing, obviously, the amount of icing that I've got, and I'm just cutting it into 12 pieces because I want 12 pumpkins, because this recipe is going to give me 12 really good sized brownies. I'm also using the corn flour there to sprinkle onto the knife so that it goes through the icing much easier. So I've cut it into quarters, and then I'm going to cut each of the quarters into thirds, and they don't really need to be exactly the same size. There's no precision needed here. This is just about really getting quite a good effect on the pumpkins. So once you've got all 12 pieces, then just take one of the pieces and give it a good old roll, and you need to press quite firmly when you're doing this, because you want to make sure that you've got rid of as many creases or as many kind of marks that you can. So give it a good roll, and then once you've got it circular, then just squeeze it top and bottom so that it looks more like a pumpkin shape. And then once you've done that, you need some kind of tool. Now this is a cake decorator's tool. I don't know what it is. I've just got several of them, but you could use anything. Just make a little dent in the top, and that's where the stalk will go eventually. And then just very gently run whatever you're using around the pumpkin to make the kind of distinctive shape that a pumpkin is. So again, this doesn't need to be precise or anything, but you just need to be gentle and do that for the whole pumpkin. So yeah, you don't, like I say, I'm no expert. I'm really no expert on cake decorating, but this is a really simple one to do and actually quite effective. And I find working with icing like this quite relaxing and also quite interesting, and you end up with something that can look fairly spectacular at the end of it. So I was quite pleased with doing these. I looked at various methods on the internet, and I kind of came up with this one based on a combination of the ones that I saw. So once I've got all of the marks on the pumpkin, then I'm just going to take a small amount of the brown fondant, and I'm just going to twist that into a kind of stalky kind of thing. If you haven't got brown fondant, you don't need to worry about that. But once I've got it, I'm just poking it into the hole that we made at the top of the pumpkin, and then I'm going to also give the thing a little bit of a twist as well. And there you go. So there's the first pumpkin, and I'm just going to do that until I've used up all of the icing so that I've got 12 pumpkins. So very briefly, I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I think are hacks. I don't know. Anyway, my lovely friend Linda, who makes cakes, beautiful cakes, taught me this. So this is like a muslin cloth, and actually this is an unused and washed Liz Earle face cloth. And I've just kind of tied it together, and I've fixed it with sellotape, and I've just put a load of corn flour in, and then you can use that to dab onto your board, and it just means that you don't get a whole load of flour or icing sugar everywhere. So anyway, I hadn't got any orange fondant, so I bought some orange dye, and I'm dyeing this white stuff. And I am never going to do this again. I'm just going to buy orange dye. This was horrible. It was a really horrible job. So I thought I'd share this with you so that you don't make the same mistake I did. So it was really difficult to do this. And I'm not sure my orange was a vivid enough orange that I wanted, but it was the best I could do. So anyway, I thought I'd share that little debacle with you. So yeah, here's the pumpkins, all 12 of them done and ready to go onto the brownie. So I was quite pleased with those. It was quite therapeutic. It didn't take very much time really, and yeah, quite nice. Anyway, because this is brownie and it's square, I'm using this plate, and I can see that I've got food on my top there, so I'm very sorry about that. I didn't notice at the time. Anyway, so this plate is an old plate that we've had for ages, and I use it for serving meals. Generally, I put like meat and potatoes and whatever on this, but this mark on the back just tells me that this plate was made in August 1881, and I just love the fact that this is so old and we're still using it. It's just clearly I haven't had it from new. I'm not that old. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that, and it looks a bit Halloweeny with the colours, I thought. So here's the brownie on the plate, looking really nice, and what I'm going to do now is just decorate it with the pumpkins. And like I said, you don't need to decorate this brownie. This brownie is absolutely fine as it is, and it's a good standalone recipe for a brownie. So if that's all you want to do, then that's fine. So I'm just going to place the pumpkins onto the brownie, and I had thought about doing it in a kind of haphazard way, but what I wanted to do was make sure that each of the 12 portions, and actually you could have gone smaller portions here because these were quite sizable portions of brownie. So I've just actually done it in a very kind of organised way, just to make sure that there is a pumpkin on every slice of brownie. So it looks a bit weird at the moment, but once we try to put some of the green vegetation on and things, then I think it'll look a bit better. So I'm just balancing these on top. Now, generally speaking, if you want something to stick into a brownie, the best time to do that is when it's just come out of the oven and you can push things into the top of it because it's soft. But I wasn't particularly fussed about that, so I just wanted to wait until the brownie was cool. So yeah, there we are. So I'm just making the icing now. So I want to just do some green trails that look a bit like the kind of stems and the stalks and the leaves and things. Very kind of not real to life. just an idea of the fact that this is actually a pumpkin patch. So I'm just taking an amount of icing sugar, so just a small amount of icing sugar and just a very small amount of water. And it's amazing how actually a tiny amount of water can make a difference to the icing sugar. And I'm also going to add some green colouring in there as well. And because it's liquid colouring, just make sure that you don't over water the icing sugar in the first instance, because the green colouring will actually add to part of the liquid. Now, I don't know if this is a normal prescribed method of making icing that you're going to pipe, but it always works for me. So again, like I say, I'm not an official cake maker or anything, but this has always worked for me, just icing sugar or water. Or if you want to make your icing a little bit more flavoured, then icing sugar or lemon juice. So I've got the green food colour in here, and I'm just adding that, and then I'm just going to mix it through just so that it makes the icing green, because as I say, this is supposed to be the vegetation of the pumpkin patch. So just mix it through as much as you can, add in like a tiny dab of water, and obviously it just do it really slowly so that you don't make it either too stiff or too loose to pipe. So I've got the finished icing here, and then I'm just going to fill my icing bag up. And again, my lovely friend Linda taught me this trick, which is I'm using this massive icing bag, and I've got just a small plain nozzle in, and I'm putting it into a pint glass, and I'm just pulling the outside of the piping bag over the glass so that I've got like a really good stable support, if you like, for the piping bag. And then I'm just going to pop the icing into the piping bag, and then just make sure that it's right down at the bottom, ready to go through the nozzle. And this is a really good and foolproof way of either doing this with icing, or if you're using buttercream or whatever, or mashed potato or whatever, it's actually really good to do this, and it keeps you both hands free to make sure that you get as much of the icing into the bag as possible. Yeah, so that's a good trick. Thank you, Linda. So once you've got your icing ready and all in your bag, then what we need to do is just pipe on little sinews of green vine or whatever pumpkins grow on, and just a kind of approximation of it. It doesn't have to be obviously correct. It's just really just getting the colour on there, so this does look like an actual pumpkin patch, with obviously the brownie being the soil, the pumpkins being the pumpkins, and the green bits just being the green bits of greenery. So I'm also just piping on a little leaf a representation to each of the pumpkins, and then I'm also piping on a few leaves as we go through the pumpkin patch. So again, I'm not an expert piper, but I do actually quite enjoy piping, and it's one of the things that I want to get better at, so maybe we'll see more of this in the future. So there you are, that is the pumpkin patch with obviously the brownies, then the greenery and the pumpkins all sitting there all nice and cute. And this is it just from a different angle, and I'm quite pleased with it really. I mean, it doesn't bear close inspection, but I think as a general overall thing it's quite good. And I think you could definitely get your kids involved in actually making the pumpkins with you. And here's a single portion of the pumpkin brownie, and as you can see, the brownie is lovely and soft and as it should be in the middle of a brownie, whereas the top is nice and crispy, a thin paper-like layer of crispiness on top, and then obviously the pumpkin and the icing. So obviously this is a treat. We're not going to have these very often, but I am going to tell you what the calories are just for the, this is just for the brownies. So I haven't included the pumpkin or the icing on top of this. But for the brownies, each portion is 389 calories. And actually it is quite rich, so you could easily just have half a portion if you want to, or you could just fill your boots and have a whole one. I didn't include the decoration because they are too sweet for me to eat anyway, but anyway, just in case someone just wants to look at the brownies, they're 389 calories per portion. So if you've lasted this long, thanks very much for watching the whole video. I know it was a long one, but I think the fact obviously you can just look at the brownie bit if you want to. Hopefully that helps you if all you're looking for is a brownie recipe. So I'll be back on Wednesday with Meals of the Week, and also Friday with a haul. And it won't be a huge haul this time because I'm trying to use up things I've got in the cupboard, which seems to be a theme amongst the YouTubers that I follow as well. So anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you have a go at the recipe, and if you do, please let me know how you get on. So happy Halloween everyone, and could you say happy Halloween, or should we say spooky Halloween, or whatever? I don't know. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, much appreciated. See you on the next one. Stay safe, take care, and look after you and those that you love. Take care. Bye bye.